Hello and welcome to the Gooners podcast, season 5, episode 27. It's like Star Wars or something, but I'm getting old, man. This is a lot of podcasts. But Eoin, bro, I love having certain people on the podcast. Yesterday was one of those days. Today's one of those days. Charles Watts yesterday, fantastic. A lot of great feedback.
Yeah, well, it was great. Do you want to know what? Not only that as well, because I remember I'm thinking back to New Year's Eve, and I was sitting there when the clock struck 12, and I said, "What's my New Year's revolution this year?" And I said to myself, I want to spend more time on the internet with a middle-aged Jewish man, and so
well, you pulled it off.
You have pulled that off. Great start to 2021.
So today, we welcome in another outstanding journalist, someone who, users of the podcast, especially those across the pond, may not have the same level of name familiarity with, but I do. Because trust me when I say Steven is literally a Hall of Fame journalist, truly. DC, Virginia Hall of Fame, yes. Yeah. And, we finally have been looking forward to talking to Steven for a while, but we finally kind of have a valid crossover reason to do so. Not only from the U.S., but from my neck of the woods in Northern Virginia. Not too, exciting of an area to live in this week, but he's known as the Washington Post soccer insider, covers the local MLS team, DC United, local women's team, Washington Spirit, the men's and women's professional leagues, national teams. Basically, if you kick it, he covers it, and it's great to have you, Steven Goff. Thanks for coming.
Hey, thanks a lot. Great to join you guys.
Hope you feel that way in 20 minutes. We'll do our best. But Steven, I mean, when you talk about longevity and consistency in the journalism field, especially in kind of the football/soccer space, I think your career is right up there with anyone's worldwide. I mean, college brought you to DC. And you've been with the Washington Post really ever since. For I won't give the number of years out, but it's more years than Eoin has been alive, I think. But you've been covering DC United since the team and the league was formed. And I think the only thing you didn't cover, because you weren't here yet, was the old diplomats of the NASL when we had Johan Cruyff and we'd be playing against the Cosmos with Pele and
that was a little before my time, although I did cover reincarnations of the diplomats in the late 80s, early 90s, before MLS started. It was kind of like a semi-professional setup, a bridge between the NASL and eventually MLS. So the diplomats name lived on. Although, most of the players were, former college players and a few Central Americans, and there was not a lot of profit made. Crowds were small, but, the legacy of that team name, that brand lived on until DC United arrived in the area.
Yeah, I mean, the diplomats is a weird thing. They played for a couple of seasons at my high school. They used to play in the actual stadium in DC, but then for a couple of years they came out to the burbs and played in the high school that I eventually went to. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. I reached out to you earlier this week when the Mesut Ozil rumor mill kind of churned back up again. Yeah. And, after the Wayne Rooney experiment kind of in some ways went better than expected, and then it all of a sudden didn't. Yeah. Things started up, and he was kind of the first person rumored to be replacing him in that kind of category of I'm going to try to resuscitate my career and see what I can do. And I didn't know he had a coffee brand here already. I mean, I'm not a coffee drinker. I didn't realize that connection. But tell us, what you know about kind of how it got started in the first place. That of all places, DC United for Mesut Ozil, just the original year ago.
Yeah, no, the relationship. I think started actually several years ago. DC United ownership and management has connections, links to English football. Jason Levian and Steve Kaplan, the owners of DC United, own Swansea City, which was in the Premier League, got relegated. So they have a lot of connections.
They're involved with Inter as well, right? Inter Milan? Or did I have
that? Was one of the previous.
Okay.
He had a stake in Inter Milan. He's no longer involved in the team. So they have their ties to European football, and specifically to the Premier League and teams in the Championship. They know the agents. They know a lot of the scouts. So in that sense, it wasn't surprising that they would make a connection with another big name player who might be interested in coming over to the U.S. to MLS and play at some point when their contract was nearing an end. 2018, late 2018, when Rooney decided, this is my last year in MLS, I'm going to go back. That's when things started to get a little more serious in talks with Ozil and his people. And since then, it's been up and down. They've had conversations over the last year and a half. Certainly the contract is a big obstacle anytime an MLS team has an interest in a world-class player. And with Rooney leaving, there was a desire on the team here to pursue another big name, for not just for on-field performance, but for business purposes. And Ozil certainly fits that bill, or has fit that bill. We'll get into more detail, I'm sure, but whether this actually happens or not, time will tell. But there is a connection. There is a line of communication there, and
I always figured him more to be like a Miami type, the LA. I mean, he loves LA. I know that he's been with the club twice, traveling to LA, and he seems to have business meetings every time he's there. But
all these guys, all these stars in Europe or South America, their first thought is, I want to live on South Beach. I want to go play for Miami. I'll go to Los Angeles, maybe New York, Chicago,
Salt Lake City. I mean, that's a big
not so much. It's some of the smaller markets in MLS certainly have a harder sell. I don't think Washington has a very hard sell, but it's not as glamorous as New York or LA, Miami. Even Seattle and Toronto have some appeal. So I think these players want to come to the U.S. and the first cities they think of are the major cities, of course.
And sorry, even if I can just jump in there, Steven, something I have heard sort of touted about when it comes to this potential move is that one of the sort of more lucrative sides to it is the potential of DC offering up actual shares of the club, a percentage of the club. How much truth do you think there is behind that? And do you think that Mesut Ozil as a sort of commercial commodity, do you think that he's potentially worth doing that to sort of gain more traction towards the MLS as a whole, but DC in particular?
Yeah, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. David Beckham, when he came to MLS, part of the deal was he'd have a stake in team ownership somewhere with expansion or with a club, established club. So I haven't heard that specifically, that would be part of the deal. I imagine it could be. Does he want to have a stake in DC United? I don't know. Does he want a long-term relationship beyond his playing career here in MLS? I'm not sure, and I don't know. I think DC United would certainly welcome new investors. They have in the past. There's a lot of silent investors, silent owners involved with DC United. Jason Levy and Steve Kaplan are the public face of the ownership group. So we'll see, but I don't have any answers on that.
All this talk about having a stake has made me hungry, but aside from that, we've kind of touched on something that, Eoin, this, we're in a group chat and we started talking about this the other day. Now let's be clear. I mean, the last few days, the energy around Ozil's transfer and where and when is certainly tipped in the Fenerbahce, area, which shouldn't be that surprising considering that when everything came out about, about it being DC United and the interest happening there, you kind of jumped on Twitter and were like, "What's this all about?" I would probably know, and I haven't really heard anything, and kind of threw some cold water on it, legitimately, and it steered in the opposite direction. But so it may be a somewhat past due question, but we had a big kind of drag out argument, and people were just talking about each other's mothers, and I mean, it got really ugly. But would it make sense? And I won't tell you which side of the argument I fell on, but like, if you're DC United,
Yeah.
if you're MLS, and if you're Mesut Ozil, from each of those three standpoints, would a move like this, knowing what you know about the clubs, the league, and Mesut Ozil, I would imagine you don't disregard football outside of the U.S., so I'm sure about his capabilities and play. Yeah. Does it make sense for each of those three, and if so, in what way?
Yeah, it's a good question, fair question. From Ozil's standpoint, yeah, I mean, if he wants to leave Europe and he wants a fresh start and something different and a change in lifestyle, yeah, the U.S. makes sense. Certainly the money is going to play a big factor in all that. And if he wants to expand his business brand, you're in the number one market to do such a thing. People I've talked to are like, well, it'd be like Rooney. I'm like, it's a different situation. Rooney has more transcendent name recognition among casual sports fans in the U.S. Even if you're not a soccer fan here in America, you know who Wayne Rooney is through the English national team, through Manchester United. Ozil, I don't think has that same name recognition, that pop. It's not diminish anything from him, but I just don't think it's the same. Also, Rooney's a goal scorer. Ozil was not necessarily a goal scorer. People love the goal scoring. Certainly, I think Beckham ran into some trouble or MLS ran into some trouble pushing Beckham and how great he was and what he meant to MLS, but Beckham wasn't a goal scorer either. So it was more of a subtle, nuanced contribution that he made to the LA Galaxy. So
if you're trying to pick up the casual fan that isn't necessarily appreciative of possession and pressing and work rate, they just want to see scoring. That's a great point.
It's something to think about. Soccer, football supporters in Washington, in America, certainly know him. They would embrace him. They'd come out to see him. Good players attract crowds and fans and attention and sponsors too. He's a great player, a world-class player, and the impact he would have on DC United on the field would potentially be immense. So, from those standpoints, makes a lot of sense. From a business standpoint, DC United, does it make sense? They got to decide that. How much money do they want to invest in one player who's, going to be 33 years old later this year? So a lot of big decisions to be made. Is he committed to the league? Is he committed to the team? It's different here. You're traveling great distances for matches. You're not just hopping on a bus. There are some very long flights, and they're not all charters.
Yeah, he didn't fancy going to Newcastle from London. Going to Salt Lake City. I mean,
that's part of it. There are responsibilities as a player here that you do not have in Europe, such as media appearances and community relations and all these other things. So it's all part of the equation.
Yeah, and I'm kind of revealing my stance on this right now, which is that I think it makes perfect sense for Ozil. I don't think it makes a ton of sense for DC United. It might make sense for MLS, but you look at the Rooney experience, and it wasn't expected to go down like that in many ways, as far as him leaving a year and a half into a 4 or 5 year.
They
2.5 actually.
Yeah, they were planning on him being here for 2.5 seasons. He ended up being 1.5 seasons. So
yeah. Where is DC United now as a result of that? I mean, I know I can tell you firsthand the stadium was fuller. and it coincided with the brand new stadium, so they needed that.
That's actually a good one, a point I'd like to maybe throw out. And I know this might sound like the most stupid, basic question that could be asked, but I feel like for maybe some of our more UK-based listeners, it's a good one to ask. And it's
we know you don't understand soccer like most people do.
Stop calling it soccer, man. It makes me get all shivery. This is the only
show when you will hear me say that. But
I know. No, but it's sort of what kind of level of standard would DC and the MLS sort of in comparison to those European leagues and English leagues, sort of what kind of level would we be looking at? Because I suppose that sort of falls into the ultimate decision of whether it's an actual possible move for a player like Ozil.
People always want to put on the chart of the leagues, like are they second, third division? I love.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to compare. I think I would say MLS would be upper championship. I think there are some teams that could compete on the lower level of Premier League, perhaps, but for the most part, it's second tier. There are certainly players in MLS that can play, have played, and should play in the Premier League. But as a whole, I think it's fair to compare it to championship level. It's a 25-year-old league, still growing, not spending the amounts of money that other leagues spend. Slow growth has been their approach. And so, it's going to take generations before they fully catch up to
any tips on players that Arsenal could maybe snatch from the MLS?
I mean, there's a lot of young MLS players that are heading over. I mean, Mark McKenzie from Philadelphia just signed with a Belgian club. We've obviously seen Weston McKennie move over to Juventus. He was in the Dallas organization. Tyler Adams is at Leipzig. He came through Red Bulls. Brendan Aronson just left Philadelphia. He signed with Salzburg. So there's a lot of quality players. Zach Steffen, the goalkeeper, the number 2 goalkeeper for Manchester City. So there's a lot of young talent here, and I think European clubs are recognizing that and making some big money offers to bring over players. DC United has 3 teenagers, homegrown players who are on the rise. They're not ready yet for Europe, but those are players that could really make a mark overseas in the coming years.
And you bring up a point that'll be our last question, because I know we're running up against the edge of our time together. But there's 2 dynamics happening with the MLS, and we're not 10 years in, we're not 15 years in, we're 25 years in now, and that's one generation, but not necessarily. It's maybe 2 or 3 football generations.
Yeah.
The strategy appears to be to have talented young players go to Europe, and to get superstar players that are past their prime to come to us, and there's no middle ground there. And the superstar players that are coming to us are on big money, and the kind of feeder aspect to the German teams and Belgian teams and Dutch teams, that's generating some cash, I guess, to pay the older players. But as a league, is the quality ever going to get better when there are no talented young players that could be with a club for 5, 7, 8 years and not be tempted to go back to Europe, because that system just doesn't set up that way, which is the main reason why I feel like these kinds of deals with a club like DC United, adding Zlatan for LA, I could see how that would make sense. But because the team was already fairly good around him, or adding Vela to the other LA team, but adding Ozil to DC United without putting other people around him might improve the team and might improve the attendance for the 2 years or 3 years max that he'll be there. But then what? Where are we after the Rooney deal? We had an awful season last year, and we're right back where we started, but out a bunch of millions and millions of dollars. So that's why I'm just skeptical about it even making sense.
Yeah, I disagree with the no middle ground part, because the best players in this league, when you get right down to it, are the Latin American players from Argentina, Colombia, Ecuador, Mexico, who aren't making extraordinary amounts of money and aren't necessarily world famous, but they are terrific players in this league. Whether it's Valeri in Portland or Pozuelo, who was MVP of the league in Toronto. We've seen it all over the league. Players who have impact. Some of the Mexican players like Vela, who was MVP last year, more of a high-profile player because he came from Mexico. And the Mexican-American interest in the sport is immense here. It's off the charts. So it's there. It's just not the famous names from Europe. Most of them are coming from Central America and South America.
And they're sticking around, I guess, because that's where my eyes are a bit off the ball, is that it just feels like, once you reach a certain level, you're too good for the MLS. And once you're, and again, I'm semi-passive of a supporter. I go to DC United games when I can, but I'm not really in tune with that, which is why we're asking you the question.
Yeah, I mean, the player, in the MLS Cup final last month for Columbus, who was just Lucas Zelarayan, he came from the Mexican League. He's Argentine, a phenomenal player, fantastic, and he has helped lift the quality in this league. And and you see it in other places as well. You see it in New England with some of their recent signings, Eel, and a couple others. So. The quality of the league is definitely getting better. It's gotten better over the last few years. There are some high-profile players who come from Europe late in their career, but there's not a lot of them. We saw Rooney here. We saw Ibrahimovic. Schweinsteiger was here for a couple of years. Lampard, Gerrard, Thierry Henry, who is now coaching Montreal.
Maybe the best out of all of them was Keane.
Yeah, Keane was fantastic in Los Angeles and won some championships. So yeah, those guys get the most attention. They're the most famous, but they're not really the heart and soul of the league. I think most of that comes from some of the U.S. national team players, as well as, like I said, the Latin American crew, particularly from places like Argentina, Paraguay, Colombia.
Excellent. Well, I want the league to succeed. I want to have and they're succeeding. 25 years is enough. It's established. But,
Sure.
It just always makes me do a head scratch when I hear about a deal with Mesut Ozil. Maybe if he was anyone other than Mesut Ozil, who I find to be not necessarily the guy that commits to the cause on the pitch, that just seems like something that would blow up in DC United's face. And so for that reason, the Fenerbache move is looking awfully good to me.
It's a fair concern. And if you brought in Ozil, this summer or whenever, you have to upgrade other positions. Particularly, you better have an awfully good finisher, because Ozil's going to create, and you need someone there who's going to put away goals. DC United's pretty good on the flanks, and they're pretty good in holding midfielders. They're missing that piece in the middle. Yeah. So, Ozil would tactically fit into what they want to do.
Perfect. Well, Steven, I appreciate you stopping by. Please let everyone know where they can find you. It's not just DC United stuff. It's internet. I mean, anything having to really do with a crossover between soccer, football, America, players going overseas, and really good stuff. So
yeah, thanks a lot. It's WashingtonPost.com and Soccer Insider on Twitter, and it's going to be a big year on many fronts.
Well, appreciate you joining us. We'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys.
All right, take care, David. All right, so we now move on to the preview, because there is a game for Arsenal coming up soon, Eoin. In fact,
sorry, I need a few minutes. I'm so sorry.
Why?
Andy broke me.
Oh, yeah. No, guys, I'm way too busy. I can't pod. Oh, Aston Villa's breaking in on goal, and they have scored. Nice. Level against Liverpool. Can't do it today, guys. I'm busy with work. Yet every 5 seconds in the chat.
I had to turn the camera off a couple of times.
Oh, is that why you turned the camera off? Because the douchebag in the chat was.
Steven's such a gentleman and such a professional, and I didn't want to make a mockery of the fucking sense that he was speaking, so I just took myself out of there. Fucking shame on you, Annie. And look at him. Let me put this up here because his YouTube picture, he actually looks like a victim, doesn't he? Like, like,
the interesting thing is what Andy doesn't know is that he's decided not to be on this episode. But yeah. I have a direct camera link I've hacked into his little like baby camera that he never took down when his kid grew up. So I can put him on the podcast. 90% chance he's nude. But I can put him on. So don't push us. But so anyway, what do you think about that? I mean, you were in the WhatsApp group when I basically took, as I like to do, I took on a bunch of men at the same time. And and I stood my ground. And I think if you look deep enough into what Steven was saying, I think I've been what is it called? I've been what is it when
you helped me the other day? I'm not helping you.
When you've been proven right about something.
Yeah. Let's just go with that. Yeah, well, look, I don't know, because I think that it's the length of deal that he's looking much like the Willian deal, but the only difference is that, I'm not sure, maybe on the field, but then again, with the standard that Mesut Ozil can't play at, he is a terrific footballer, and I think that if you're willing to put up with this lack of work rate, he can bring something. But financially, I think he's an absolute juggernaut, and I think any club that sign him that aren't really going to be massively over competitive, or in terms of marketing, it will be insane.
Here's what I disagree. Financially, he's a juggernaut. For him, he's figured out a way. I mean, look, the Fenerbahce rumors, as was said, is about getting his wife a job and his agent, $5 million quid. The DC United thing is tied into coffee. I mean, this is what bugs me. And look, I'm a capitalist, so more power to somebody that can build a brand. And it's like I say about a lot of people, who are more successful at us with YouTubing. God bless you. You've done well doing what you're doing. I'm not gonna, but that doesn't mean I gotta want you to play for my club that I have any level of investment in, or be around the club, because I feel like he's sucking.
Oh,
he's just sucking. No, wow. He's sucking the energy and the money and everything out of the club. And again, he didn't write his own contract.
Yeah,
he didn't hold anybody's head down and force the numbers to be higher. So again, he's taken advantage, but not everybody is constantly looking to take advantage. And between him and his team around him and his brand and his image and his stupid, I mean, I've just had enough. And when I heard he was coming to DC potentially, I started thinking about it, and I think I was more excited about Wayne Rooney coming than I would be about Mesut Ozil coming. And I hated Wayne Rooney.
I think that, look, realistically, as you said there, we were almost panicking due to the news breaking about Ozil going to Fenerbahce, and the likelihood of that looking sort of more and more sure on as the days went by. But
and we were panicking because then this podcast would have become obsolete. That's our first motivation. We didn't want the 8 people to be bored with the first 20 minutes of the podcast.
No, but look, that deal makes complete sense. Ozil is apparently a Fenerbahce fan. He gets on well with the president of Fenerbahce. He loves Istanbul.
Gets along well with the president of the damn country.
He's an absolute cult hero with the majority of the Muslim football fan base. I just think that if there's a move tailored to him, and do you want to know what? In a way, because to me, Fenerbahce is fine. Their financial structure wouldn't cover the sort of size of wage packet that Mesut Ozil is on at the minute. So to me, cheers. To me, he would have to take some sort of deduction, and to me, that's a move.
Or get non-cash compensation type of things that are
it's a non-missionary move. You know, I'm sure he could go places and do different things. Like, well, he couldn't go to China anymore. But anyway, yeah.
I remember when people were talking about can we sell this guy to China because everybody was doing it at the time, and like that is off the table at this point.
Yeah. No, it's a no-go zone. Yeah, no, Fenerbahce, it's looking ever more and more likely. It's just a case of whether will it be in January or in the summer. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. But one thing's for sure, regardless of what you think of Ozil or the club or whatever, or however the situation was handled, it needs to end now. You know, it's too long.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, I get excited about the potential. You know, there's stories saying that he could move in January, and that there may. I think, frankly, the deal to move in January is done with the exception of haggling over who's going to pay what percentage of his salary.
Yeah,
his wages, and that's typical Arsenal. Like I think it's a win if you just get him gone. We're going to pay him anyway, and I just rather him be gone. So. You know, if we're paying him $250 or $350, depending on what you believe about, you know, appearance fees and bonuses, you know, I think that's a sunk cost at this point.
Yeah,
I would love to get some of that back because that can make the difference on a contract extension for Balogun or something like that. But you know, I think he's going to move in January, and I'm kind of thrilled that it's the Fenerbahce rather than to DC United because I do not see how that works out. And will he be an improvement? Will he improve our the team on the pitch for DC United? Yeah, if he plays, absolutely he would. But when he leaves, it's like it's like taking cocaine. I mean, you're going to feel good for a while. I've heard, and then afterwards, you're like. I'm no better off than I started, and I need to go get some more. And it sounds like I'm admitting to doing something that I have never done in my life.
You're looking off into the distance there, like you're, reliving regrettable memories.
Well, my kids are angry at me for saying no. I'm just kidding. No, it just seems kind of silly. If you do something like that, the concept that my opposition in our WhatsApp group on this topic were saying is that they're going to bring eyes to DC United, they're going to bring eyes to MLS. Those eyes are going to stay there once Mesut Ozil's gone, and that last part, I'm not so sure about.
Yeah,
and I don't see how it would make sense to dish out the kind of money it would make sense to do, because you can only max out with so much year by year. It's about growing longevity in the football team's brand and fan base, and I don't think Mesut Ozil does that after he's gone. I think it's a short-term shot in the arm.
Here's one, and I've seen this sort of being put out by multiple people. Now, I'll say this off the bat: they weren't overly credible people or sort of high-profile people putting this story out. But I've seen on multiple places saying that Mesut Ozil had a conversation with Mikel Arteta and Edu quite recently.
was this the overly credible person?
No. But had a conversation with Mesut Ozil quite recently, and they said that he would not be registered in the squad after January, regardless of what the outcome of the.
I hope not.
Is. But apparently, he was devastated. Apparently, that he sort of had to be consoled after, and he was pretty annoyed, and his sole purpose of being at the club was to stay and trying to fight to get back into the team because he loved the club. How much do you believe that story? And if that is true, how much does it change the sort of dynamic of the whole sort of process of what Ozil's went through?
I don't believe it for a second, because I think he's known the writings on the wall, and he has looked at his situation as one where he holds all the cards, both from a financial standpoint and a public relations standpoint. And he does, because Arsenal's botched it. I mean, I'm not absolving Arsenal from this. If it had to do with his statements, and some people are like, how can you not think that? I don't know that it's 100% that, because he played for 3 months afterwards.
Yeah.
If it's about not, standing up about the pay cut, I also think that's a botch from Arsenal, because by all accounts, he was willing to defer more money than they were asking him to cut, and possibly give it. So the team is responsible for a lot of this, but That said, the guy's acted like a complete douche in my eyes ever since then, and I can't believe that he was honestly hoping to play from January to July or January to May for Arsenal, and devastated when he found out he wasn't. I think he just knows he's got more strings to pull now, and the relationship between him and Arsenal at this point is as broken as this. We're going to get so much use out of that clip, baby.
You need to get the one with the Stone Cold Steve Austin music.
Yeah. No, I haven't, but that's a great idea. That's a hilarious idea.
Yeah. Apparently, Charles reckons it's already been done. But back to Ozil, Mike.
I'll do that once I make all the money back from the 200 quid that we apparently spent on having him on the podcast.
I'll PayPal you that half.
Yeah, really. I mean, we got overhead, we got microphones, we got the StreamYard subscription, and then
Thank fuck for those super chats yesterday.
Yeah, we have thousands and thousands of pounds that we pay out to our guests every week, including. If anyone thinks that Charles Watts charges to be on a podcast, you're an idiot. If he doesn't want to be on the podcast, he won't. If he does, he doesn't charge. In fact, he's paid us in the form of our charity more than we've paid him, which is zero. So what's the word you like to use that will point towards those whining people? It's a 6-letter word that starts with F.
Oh, fuckies.
Fuckies. Fuck you.
But back to Ozil, Mike, because do you want to know what? I think that we're going to see him against Newcastle.
Oh, shut up.
No, I'm joking. Fucking with you, yeah. But
we'll see him against Newcastle. It'll be on Twitter, though.
Going into the game against Newcastle, Mike, Newcastle are notorious for putting out strong lineups in these early games, which I suppose, look, club in Newcastle's stature nowadays and the sort of barren spell they've been on, and I suppose you have to take every competition as seriously as you can. But I think we're going to talk through our lineups. I think you have them there.
Before we say that, though, I do want to point out that you're right about Newcastle, except they play Tuesday. Whereas we don't play until Thursday, and my one hope is, Saturday, Tuesday is not abnormal for a club that's built to be in Europe, but Saturday to Tuesday, for them might mean a little bit more rotation than we'd normally get.
Let's have a look at the Premier League table. That is the only thing. Newcastle, how are Newcastle doing? Yeah, I suppose they haven't really. I was going to suggest that maybe they'd be safe enough just to sort of feel a weaker side in the Premier League. Who are they playing on Tuesday?
They play Sheffield United, but they're Newcastle's not exactly pulling up trees at the moment. I think their form table is loss, draw, loss, draw, loss.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can get that up here. Sometimes I have trouble getting it up on the screen.
You need some help?
Sure. Why don't you? Fuck you. So Newcastle in 15th. Taking the spot that we've since vacated. I guess they could be as high as 14th with.
High up we are.
Look how high up we are. Did we think that we'd reach a point where halfway through the season we'd be like jerking each other off over being 11th instead of whereas Newcastle's in 15th. I mean, times are good right now, my friend.
They are.
But I think frankly Newcastle needs to come out and field a full strength squad against Sheffield United, because you go and you rotate it to try to beat us in the cup, and then go put out a less than full strength 11 against Sheffield United, and then you end up with egg on your face, which I actually had this morning. It was delicious, but
nice.
So with that in mind, I am somewhat optimistic that we may actually see something of a lesser strength Newcastle, but we're not picking the Newcastle starting 11. We're picking the Arsenal one. So
we are, and the mountain of people in the live chat box. You can get involved with this too. Let us know what to think of our starting 11s and what you would like to change as well. But we'll take a run through our starting 11s and sort of get on to why we have picked the teams that we have. Michael,
Let me see what we got here. We're going to start with. That's
Mike.
That's the wrong one. Hold on. Super professional.
Yeah. Let's see. Newcastle have COVID cases. Yeah, that is true. They're missing quite a few players. I think St. Maximum is still out. A couple of others as well.
That's actually a big.
He's devastating.
Big deal.
Devastating, man. He's so good. Here we go. There's Mike's. So let me take this.
Now let me just say that my decision to put Leno in this position was there was a three-way tie, and then one of them I had to eliminate. Dejan Iliev is apparently on loan to Shrewsbury Town, so that went out the window. He was going to be my first choice. My second choice was going to be we just don't play a goaltender.
The goaltender. Jesus, your Americanisms are really coming out this evening.
We don't play. Yeah, I got in the soccer. In the soccer, and looking at Andy's name in the chat makes me think of goaltenders, but shitty ones. But yeah, I mean, so finally I settled on Leno. It certainly wasn't going to be Runnerson. Although honestly, if he starts tomorrow, I won't be complaining because the guy has had some bad games. He's not that good, but I mean, I would play Leno though. I think you have to come out and say we're going to start our strongest goalkeeper in every game that you can, whether it's Europa League round of 32. At this point, we go with the guy that we trust, and that's Leno.
Yeah. Just before you move on to your right back selection, Mike, I have to give a shout out. I think this is my mate Cavi. I'm not going to illegally go out to Cavi's house tomorrow to watch the match. I'm not doing that.
You would never do anything like that.
Never would. Never. Be responsible, folks.
And you would not take your masks off and make out at halftime if we're winning.
Yeah, it's very warm in Kevin's house, so we often don't wear clothes. Yeah. I know
it's starting to sound like no, never mind. I'm not
back in the chat is probably imagining, like two hunks, sweaty on a leather couch. We're both quite large men, not in the good sense, sort of fat and sweaty. Anyway, right back.
I would fit right in this and into Mike's fantasy right here then as well. Back four. I went back and forth between kind of three at the back, four at the back, and ultimately it didn't leave me with the ability to play some of the people up front that I wanted to play. So the tactical noose-filled genius that I am went with Mainsley on the left. Bellerin is starting in right, not because I think he's our best shot. I thought about Cedric there, but because I actually want Bellerin to play on Saturday so that we can put Mainsley there on Thursday. Do I think that's what's going to happen? No, I think we're going to see Cedric there tomorrow. But I put Bellerin in right. Chambers has got to play. By all accounts, he's healthy. He, just isn't preferred. You've got Mari in front of him. You've got healthy again Gabriel. You've got Holding, who seems to be preferred. We've seen Mustafi and Luiz get game time before we've seen Chambers get game time. What better of an opportunity than this? And Gabriel, if we were playing on Tuesday or Wednesday, I'd probably keep Gabriel out. But since we don't have a game until Thursday after this, I put Gabriel in and have him be the first sub out after 55 minutes or so, if he makes it through well. And then Mainsley on the left, because you can basically plug in Mainsley would have actually been my second choice goalkeeper. Is he not the guy that would? And maybe this has happened, but I mean, if Leno got a red card, and we had no more subs, and we need like 15 minutes of one of the players, the position players playing in goal, is he not the obvious choice? Or who else on the team would you rather see in goal if not him?
Gabriel, maybe.
Oh, I wouldn't risk that.
Yeah. I remember.
You saw how Leno landed on his cerebellum in the Europa League game and almost died.
I remember in I know I don't really want to even talk about this dude on this podcast, but in Harry Kane's debuting season in the Europa League for Spurs. He scored a hat-trick and then went into nets and saved a couple of shots. So, so there's some good outfield ones. I think Phil Jagielka as well.
It's definitely happened, and but, I mean,
actual outfield players who have went into nets and been decent.
I think Mainsley would excel. If you put him there, I don't know that I would start him at the 9. Mm-hmm. But I mean, anywhere else on the pitch, including in goal, I would be fine with him. He just seems like he just put his best foot forward. So anyway, that's my long-winded back four. Partey for the same reason as Gabriel. More of a cameo than anything else, but because I anticipate the Newcastle squad being a little lighter, I'd like to at least see him get a half or 60 minutes in, and Xhaka for the opposite reason, because if he's not going to be gone, if he's not going to be sold between today and tomorrow, which is what I would really like, then play him in this game so that we can play a preferred midfield against Palace on Thursday. Obviously, don't want to go too hard on ESR. This is a perfect game to rest him and have him be full strength for our Thursday, Sunday, or actually we go Thursday, Monday. We're actually getting a favor from the scheduling gods here that we normally don't get. But Willock in the 10, I mean, he's got to show something, and I'd rather him there than – I would actually put Willie on there from a strategic standpoint, but I don't ever want to see him on the pitch again. I want him out of the club, and it's hard for me to put a guy in my 11 that I want out of the club.
Yeah.
Except I've done that with Xhaka. But anyway, Willian, I think, is even worse.
Yeah. And
what's so funny?
It's just I'm just thinking of your "Everyone Out" T-shirt that you've been sporting of late.
Yeah, I could put it on if you want. It's right there. But yeah, and then the front three, we're looking at Nelson on the left, Balogun. If we don't start, or especially if we don't have him on the bench tomorrow, then he's gone. I mean, he's obviously not going to stick around if he can't even get into the 20-person squad for an FA Cup game.
That's not good, is it? Like, see, I've seen some people giving Mikel Arteta credit for some of the comments made when he was asked in his press conference about Balogun's contract. But not that I'm dissing Mikel Arteta when I say this here, but it doesn't look good when you come out and so rashly throw digs at an agent. To me that means that the talks aren't going very well at all. They're nowhere near an agreement of yet, and apparently it's rumored that up to 15 different clubs, and some of them are big clubs, have been negotiating with Balogun. So
what do you make then of the next day's rumor? And again, the source of these rumors can often have to do with a strategic element to it. But now all of a sudden we're hearing about Eddie Nketiah going to potentially West Ham for varying figures between 15 and 25 million. Is that the club saying that so that they put the agent in a continually further bad place, or because if that were true, that would seem to make room for a Balogun contract extension. But it's the same agent. That's the issue.
Yeah, well, see, this is it. And I mentioned on the podcast yesterday that it's a bit of a difficult situation, because sometimes with these agents, you can sort of give them a few false promises to get the deal over the line. But because he represents multiple players at the club, it's one of them ones where the club have to be very careful how they sort of treat this situation, because they could really tarnish relationships with that agent in the future. He represents Bukayo Saka, Reece Nelson, among others as well. But it's a very, very difficult one. But I think Mike Hertz asks here, can Ozil play? And yes, he is eligible to be in the squad. So he is. But Mike, if you want to throw mine up, then I'll rattle through mine.
That reminds me of like when my mom would correct me, when I say, can I can I use the bathroom? Well, I wouldn't ask her that, but I still ask her that. As a matter of fact. No, it would be like, can I go to my friend's house? And she'll be like, oh, I'm sure you can, but you're not allowed to.
Yeah.
So yes, Ozil can play, but he's not being asked to. And Ray makes a good point. You know, when this is why I hate doing starting 11s. I'm thinking of who I want to play, and I never ever think of it from I want him to get a limited run out, so he should be on the bench and ready to come in. I mean, that's the sensible move.
See, this is if I was actually funny. We both looked at the same comment because I was going to pull that up once I got to my team. So it was because I have a counter argument to that, which I will get to.
Okay.
So
yeah, I mean, I actually kind of agree with Ray there. Partey probably be better coming in the 55th minute than going out in the 55th minute for this one.
I disagree.
Well, all right. Well, I mean, it's the first time anyone's ever disagreed on the Gooners podcast. So
it is, yeah. Well, fuck you, Mike.
Fuck you. No, don't say yous. Don't ever do that again. It's gotta be fuck yous.
Oh God. You don't even have a starting 11.
I was like, I haven't seen Andy in the chat, so he's either not coming and he's not on anymore, or
I was just I wasn't listening.
This is going to be the rescue thing.
I have no idea what the conversation was. I listened to like 2 seconds when I jumped on, and then I was like, I bet I can. I just want to try and get them to laugh.
You fucking did.
And then I saw. I texted a picture of your face, and I was like, all right, I got him. And then I was like, Mike is not. He's a statue.
You can't break me. You cannot break me.
I can break you. I know I can break you. But I was like on this call trying not to laugh. I was interviewing someone trying not to laugh at my own joke.
So it backfired on you because you're the one that ended up looking unprofessional.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was the reason I turned my camera off was because Steven was talking and I was like trying to keep a straight face, and he was like, "This dude's gonna think there's something wrong with me."
I'm pretty sure he thinks there's something wrong with both of us. But
I also love that Becca was the one to call me out. No one else.
Yeah, that's because I actually had to turn the chat off. It was breaking me too much, so I turned it off and went into the private chat. But Andy, let's see what you make of my starting 11. Mike's been loading it up for the past.
I'm assuming this is for tomorrow.
It is, yes.
Yeah, this isn't like for the rest of the season. This is what we want to do. Oh, I actually have to.
Put it back up, you numpty.
Hold on.
No, that was Mike's.
Hi, Becca.
This is the portion of the podcast where Andy just flirts with people. Bats his eyelashes.
Becca and we could get married, and she wouldn't have to worry about the last name thing.
That's true. She also wouldn't have to worry about ever having to give you anything.
Tread lightly.
Cookies?
Sorry, James.
I know I don't have much credibility, but
that's not the right one. Jesus.
I thought you did this before.
No, this is my first time.
Mm-hmm. Mike Hurt says, finally some class. Fuck you, Mike.
That's 2 days in a row now. Mike is like big props me. Never before. Thanks, Mike.
Nice, don't. He's a
stay safe out there in California, man. Yeah, that looks good for tomorrow.
You've covered. You've
look at it yet. Here's Ian's.
I would take out Aubameyang and put in Martinelli.
Right.
You would play him in this game?
I will explain to you why I've chosen this 11. Okay, so like you said, for fuck's sake, man, I'm trying to be professional.
You know what would be funny is if our guest, if Steven Goff from earlier in the podcast just got off the podcast and started watching it.
No, I wouldn't be.
You'd be like, what was I just on?
At this stage, I'm like, thank fuck I kept that Gooner crack account open. No, Leno, straightforward choice. Runnerson is shite. Cedric and right back, because I actually think that Hector Bellerin has been good the last couple of games. Callum Chambers in at right centre back, because I think that there's a few people sleeping on Callum Chambers. I don't know if you remember, but before his big,
I would sleep on Callum Chambers.
I would sleep all over him. His hair is so good right now. But anyway,
and he hates pineapple on pizza. Andy and I learned that firsthand. So I've always got time for a guy
Does he
Like
like
that.
his mouth? Anyway, Callum Chambers, he was brilliant before his injury. I thought he was actually one of our best players at that time. Pablo Mari in there as well, because I think that it might come a little too soon for Gabriel. Maybe.
That's also a good point.
Yeah, Mainsley left back because we have no other option at that in that position, and he's very good in it. Partey, right, here's the one that Ray Anderson was talking about, saying that he would rather Partey come off the bench. I actually don't like when people do that with someone coming back from injury, because I think that, you okay, Andy? Are you leaking from your face?
No, I was about to I wanted to burp.
Okay. Do you want me to stop so you can burp?
So this is where we start becoming professional.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I want Mike to pitch me his lineup after this, and then I'm going to choose which lineup we're going to.
I can already tell you how that's going to end. So I've known you long enough that I could have the fucking the Europe 11 on there, and you would still pick Owens.
No, keep going, Owen. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's all good. So Ray Anderson, there's Ray's comment. And the reason I don't like that is because if Partey comes on at, let's say, 50 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever it is, and he gets injured again, well, there's a sub used. And plus the warm-up on the sideline when you're a substitute isn't as rigorous as the pre-match warm-up. So you're not going out as cold. I think that you're more prepared to go out, and injuries are sort of less likely to be sustained. So that's my reason behind that there, I think. But I agree that I would only have him on for maybe a half. Elneny, straightforward. I think that that partnership was actually decent between him and Partey as well. Ceballos in the 10, I think he's probably the only other sort of logical option in that position, because ASR's out. I don't like Willock in that position. To be honest with you, I don't really like Willock as a footballer very much at all.
You don't think he's going to make the team?
No. He will probably, but I'm not having him in mind. This is a desired 11. Aubameyang on the left, because I don't think that he's done enough to be in the actual starting 11, and I think he needs a chance to prove himself, but not in the Premier League where Gabriel Martinelli's fit and ready. Pepe on the right because William's a cunt, and then Balogun up top, because I do agree that I think that the club need to show the kid a sign of faith, and I think that Eddie Nketiah has sort of failed to flatter in any of the opportunities that he's been given, and I think it's fair at Balogun's age and after what he has made of his limited chances for him to sort of be firm and say, look, you're going to have to start to show me that you want me at this club, and I think that this is the perfect opportunity to throw him in. So
absolutely,
Mike. So now, Mike, go to your table. Or, I mean, your lineups, excuse me.
Hold on. We're going to invite in another special guest, and welcome Sophie to the pod. I went on the wonderful Highbury squad earlier today, and while they were on air, I asked Sophie if she wanted to join the pod after they were done, and I didn't think she would actually take us up on it. But we're going through our 11s for tomorrow.
So the first time I've seen her without sunglasses on.
Yes, I dropped the sunglass thing because I didn't want everyone to think I was a total wanker living in California. Even though I love wearing sunglasses, because let's be honest, I'm a chick and they hide the black bags under my eyes because I sleep as much as Mike does probably. But
yeah,
look,
I haven't slept since 11 p.m. last night. I'm on the GFP schedule.
You were up as much as me, but look, I'm wearing an apron. It's denim at least, and I'm making grilled chicken right now. So
nice.
I took a break from making grilled chicken to come hang out with you guys.
Well, I texted Mike the other day, and he texted me back. I was asleep, and it was like at 6:30 p.m. I'm like, what is your sleep schedule?
It's in every way, from baldness to beard to sleep schedule to body shape. I am becoming Danny the GFP.
I mean, if you're going to become anyone, become Danny.
You could do worse. And I appreciate that you are cooking chicken during our podcast. Normally, Lee Judges, when he joins us, is eating the chicken on our podcast.
Listen, Lee is either eating or having a half lager shandy. Shameful. He should be absolutely ashamed of himself. But
so if you know that I was with him the first time he had the half pint.
Yeah, I know.
The night it was born was actually at Gander Green Lane when he got a half pint at the bar at Sutton United. And that was that's a night that will live in infamy. But
I'm going to have to let Vinny Vieira. Can you turn the oven off? the chickens. The time has gone off. Just hey Ian, how you doing? Hey Andy, how's it
Hello.
going, lads? You all good?
So here's what we're doing.
How are you, Ian?
Yeah, Ian. Owen just showed us his 11. Mike's
Wait,
gonna pop.
you say Ian, they say Owen, you say tomato, I say tomato, potato, tomato. Let's call the Ian thing off.
It's just call me whatever you like at this moment in time, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about
We are looking at how to pronounce this traditional Irish name. How do you go about pronouncing it? Not like it's spelled, but simply Owen.
Ian.
Owen.
Ian.
Owen.
Ian.
Owen. Here are many more videos on
Yep. Can I just say something here? Like, why is it you, a microwave, and a solo red cup?
I will tell you why. Because for about 6 weeks, our kitchen was being renovated, as you know, and our kitchen kind of became our dining room became our kitchen. We had a microwave there, and that's kind of where we lived and ate for the time period. So yes, that was.
I love that.
Mike, quickly throw your starting 11 up because I gotta jump.
Also,
Okay.
I like to let you know that with my chicken, I'm making roasted peppers and roasted Roma tomatoes with a
Nice.
balsamic reduction and a splash of olive oil.
Nice. I had a Rustler burger for dinner.
The only part of that I would eat, and I would just keep everything else on the side, is the olive oil.
Andy, you have to leave. I just got here. What's up with that?
It's a power thing. There can't be two alphas on this together. So I'll let you take it. I got to go to work. Mike, throw your 11 up.
I'm trying to. I'm trying to throw it up.
Sounded like he said, I've got to go to war, but I think he meant work. I think that's what I heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, he likes to have. Oh, this is the wrong one. He likes to have this portrayal like he actually has a job beyond our podcast.
I like the shaved thing you've got going on there, Andy. Very hardcore. Very
This is my COVID cut.
your COVID
Yeah.
cut.
It's like, remember all the dudes in the early noughties tried to shave their heads to look like Justin Timberlake, and everybody failed, and you look like a big fucking spud.
Is that officially what it's called? The early noughties,
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you call them?
the double zeros, I guess.
Jesus Christ. Right.
Oh, as opposed to the double D's.
Which I also have.
I'm only seeing a couple of it. Owens wins. Bye.
Sophie, starting 11 for Newcastle. What do you reckon of Mike's team, and what changes do you
So-
think that you would make?
Great question, because I was just talking to Super Kev about this on the pod, and we had
I
the
had to
back and
jump off yours when you were getting into this kind of discussion. So,
yeah, when
so-
we were talking about Balogun, and KC thinks if he's not committing and his agent's acting the way he is, there's no way for Arteta to be able to play him. And I was talking about how we've seen Sanchez and Ramsey and other players that we're ready to sell and potentially maybe leaving playing. I told him I would rest Lacazette because he's now too much of a value to the team in terms of goals. I would force Aubameyang, not force. I would play Aubameyang, make him earn his spot back, force him into maybe scoring a goal, playing better, humbling him a little bit. So I agree with Pepe. Xhaka, no. Partey, I wouldn't risk in this game at all. I'd rest him until Crystal Palace. I'd play Willock. I'd play El Neni, maybe Ceballos. I'd play Maitland-Niles for sure. Gabriel, I was saying maybe just let Holding and Mari keep that rhythm going that they have right now. Save Gabriel for Crystal Palace. And any chance I get to bench Bellerin is a gift to God.
This to me is a benching of Bellerin in the sense that I don't want him playing against Palace or the.
Oh,
or
I
the,
see.
the Premier League
Reverse
version of
benching
Newcastle.
psychology.
Yes, although it's not consistent throughout the squad, because I would feel the same way about Pepe. I'd feel the same way, But in any case, yeah, we have a different approach to this game, I guess, and it's just that we're fortunate enough to have 5 days between games. Normally with an FA Cup and midweek game, I don't know why we're playing on Thursday instead of Tuesday or Wednesday, but I'm happy about it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a sprinkle, but if you had asked me what lineup we're going to play, I think that would have been an easier thing to answer because
I agree with Leno, though. I agree with Leno. I think, if you're Ranison had such a horror show and you say to yourself, well, maybe putting him back in, guys, is the way to kind of help force him into playing in situational football that may give him a better chance to perform. But we kind of saw what he did last time. And at this point, the FA Cup, very important to the club. I'm not sure I would risk starting him over Leno. Across the other parts of the pitch, I'm not too concerned about interchanging. But, we've got a great history with Newcastle. We did this in the show earlier from 19, I think the first time is 27, maybe even earlier than that. Played them in 52. They beat us in a couple finals. They've beaten us along the way. We've beaten them. There's a great history here between the two clubs in this competition. And it's always a good game against Newcastle. But I think our pedigree will come strong against them tomorrow.
And speaking of FA Cup pedigree and just reminiscing about the FA Cup, you can't get any better than the show that Soph's just finished. So if you weren't watching that, and when you're done watching this, go to the Highbury Squad because
thank you, Mike.
Kev was wound up today.
He was on fire. He was on fire tonight.
I think it's a picture of Eoin Wright. Player that was on fire.
I think it's because I compared. I thought he was in a picture, but it was actually Christopher Way. And and he got really offended by that, which was absolutely freaking genius and brilliant on my part.
You pulled a Chambo Gibbo.
Totally. But then I put the wig, the pink wig with him and Righty, and that seemed to kind of, ease things a little bit. But no.
See that you touched on there, Soph, was Balogun. And I've mentioned, I've heard you talk about this a few times, and I always reference what Kev said about, the club. Why should the club give playing time to a player who isn't willing to commit? But I've mentioned before that I think the club are at a crossroads now. With they're in a dilemma between Balogun and Nketiah, and as Kevin Jean said here, there's an apparent rumor going around that West Ham have made an approach for Eddie Nketiah, which I'm not sure how much truth there is to be honest. But
where it came from, like
let's operate on the premise that it is true. Which one of those two youngsters would you sort of err on the side of putting your faith in?
I think Eddie's had more first team football than Balogun. So, and that was one of the arguments that KC was making on the show, is that we haven't really seen Balogun play at top level. And my argument was, well, we've always argued about our talented youth and giving them a chance to make an impact at top level. We've given that to ESR of late. He went to Huddersfield and proved himself as well. Eddie's been to Leeds on loan. Some of these other players, Maitland-Niles, Reece, all gone on loan. Balogun hasn't really done that, and I think that's where KC's coming from. But for me, when you look at a player who has a little bit of that Eoin Wright, he's got a bit of the Kevin Campbell about him. He has some strengths that encompass a lot of really good strikers we've seen in the past from Arsenal. I would throw him in right now, especially after what Arteta said about the fact that the player wants to stay, the manager wants him to stay, the football club wants him to stay, but the agent I'm not sure about. Well, let's put the agent in a predicament. And that was
an interesting thing for him to say, considering how many players on the team are share the same common agency. But I agree with you. I mean, it's not like we need to preserve his value, but we don't want to play him and worry about him getting hurt because we're trying to showcase him. He's leaving on a free if we don't, if he doesn't play. So, he can sign it pre-contract anytime. So,
and once again, we'll be giving. I'm not saying we're going to make another mistake on the lines of Serge here,
right.
But why not sign him to some type of new deal and get something out of him in a year or two? It doesn't do any favors for the Arsenal right now to let a prospect like him go. And we're seeing the best crop of talent coming through that Haaland that we haven't seen in years.
But
I think he's important that we hold on to him.
Like, is there not smarter business the club could do? Like, you think of Balogun, a kid his age. Like, say, for example, could the club not sit him down and say, look, the avenue into the first team at the minute is congested, but it's congested by aging players. What we would like to do is to sign you on a permanent basis, to loan you out for 1 year. After that 1 year, Lacazette will likely be moved on. Aubameyang will be older. We'll have a fair judgment of where Eddie Nketiah is at. And at that point, we can take you back and see where you are then.
So this is a brilliant point that you bring up. and something that we've talked about in the sense that Aubameyang's 31 now, going on 32. Lacazette is going to hit 30 this year. And this is now a younger man's game. Remember back in the day, guys, we used to talk about a player hitting 28, 29 and hitting his peak. Well, now we're talking about that being 23, 24. It's completely different. The modern game has evolved and changed greatly in terms of where we think players are at the prime of their career. Arsenal are going to have to start thinking about what striker do they want. For me, I've always been a huge fan of Lilian Thuram's son. He's played in Germany in Bundesliga, very super competitive. I know he had a foul moment a few weeks ago where he had a spitting incident, which was very uncharacteristic of him. And it felt like that came out of left field. But someone like him is a more experienced version of a Balogun, So, for me, we have to start thinking ahead and forward. KC was even saying that he would let Lacazette go in the summer. Mm-hmm. Because of the fact we can cash in on him now and make more money than we would in a year's time. And I understand that, and I think that makes sense. But at some point,
I was ready to try to cash in on him last summer.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that you're going to have that much sell-on value. And I've been actually on the balance, I've been pleased with what he's brought to the table this year. So in a sense, I'm glad that we didn't, but
Eddie's not the answer, you guys.
He's not.
He's not.
I used to think he was. I get a little irrationally exuberant about young players that do well in the U23s. All I can remember from Eddie Nketiah was constantly hearing Danny talk about him on the Bergkamp Wonderland when they did their U23 reports and how many goals he was banging in, and so I wanted him to get every opportunity. Some people were ready to sell him after 2 Europa League games where I think he put one in Rosette that should have gone into the goal. But I'm like, give the guy time. He has an eye for goal, and we saw him play really well in that American tour last summer.
But
he did so well in that tour.
He scored a goal in Charlotte, but he also scored that goal in La La Land in the last minute to beat Bayern, I think.
But I think when you look at I often say this here, and it's that I think that there's too much emphasis put on easing young players into the game now. I think at the age that these players are at now, and the three that I always highlight are Eddie Nketiah, Joe Willock, and Reece Nelson. Now compare them to Bukayo Saka, Emile Smith-Rowe, and Gabriel Martinelli. That's the difference. There's a spark. There's an instant after. I would say 6 months of senior football, you should know whether a player is going to be ready to make it. And we can't keep living our life with this Serge Gnabry-itis where we shit ourselves every time we've got a youth player about letting him go. Because the truth is, for every one Serge Gnabry, for every one Jordan Sancho,
15. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So you can't.
I would say Reece Nelson has more talent, raw talent, and an excitement about him than Willock or Eddie. I would let Willock or Eddie go before I let Reece Nelson go. I think Reece Nelson has some value. And again, if we want to compete and we want to be consistent in the Premier League again, we need a top quality world striker. And if Aubameyang is aging out, even though he's been given this massive contract, and since he signed that thing, he's done nothing, as I like to say. Lacazette, for me, I would start day in, day out in the Premier League right now because he's got that confidence. But if we're looking to evolve the team and move on to the next chapter and generation, for me, I'd be looking at a striker like Thuram, who I think can grow into a role like that at Arsenal. He feels like that kind of Arsenal player too, and it's not going to be cheap. I mean, Aubameyang's goals, let's be honest, they've saved us over the last 2 years. What's happened to him this season is... I think he's focusing too much on the cars and the money and the social media stuff, a little bit like Dele Alli.
You think you don't think it has to do with kind of that the general fractured squad that we seem to have at this point behind the scenes?
No, because if Saka's performing and ESR's come in to perform and Lacazette is playing as well as he has, and Pablo Mari can come into the team and have an impact, albeit against a Brighton or a weakened West Brom side. If Kieran Tierney is playing to the level he is, why isn't Aubameyang, especially as captain, leading by example? Definitely in the early season, in terms of creativity, we kind of hindered that. But he's never got stuck into the game. He's never found a path into a game, has he, guys? He's never inserted himself into the game where he's not getting the ball. And I think that's the biggest issue a lot of Arsenal fans have, is the energy and the effort that he's been putting in is completely night and day to the player who we saw save us last season and lead us to an FA Cup.
Yeah, and it's terrifying as well, I suppose, when we're only reaching the end of the Mesut Ozil saga, that it looks like, I hope it doesn't end this way, but I suppose it's always, the trauma of already enduring a situation like that already. The thought of having another player on high wages sitting on the bench, because it's sort of a catch-22, because you look and you say, well, do we play him to get our money's worth out of him, or do we persist with Gabriel Martinelli, or because he could?
You have to go with the hot hand. We can't afford to try to let somebody find their way out of a slump at this point.
I would start Martinelli all day long and make Oba sit on the bench and crave it and want it and come back and prove it.
Yeah,
I back him to come good. I don't. I do
too.
He's just when the switch flips, it's going to flip. And I kind of thought that was going to be, when he got the goal against United, even though it was a penalty. Sometimes that's all it takes.
Do you think the captaincy plays a part on Aubameyang?
I've said this many times that I don't think he has the personality to be captain. I think he has the personality to be a great, positive, happy, always smiling team player, but the burden of being captain of a Premier League club comes with a lot of responsibility. People don't realize what the captain is asked to do a lot of the time when he's not playing on the pitch. And sometimes you're a natural captain. This is why I go back, and everyone in chat, you can kill me right now or on replay, but this is why Xhaka was selected as captain, because he has the ability to lead on the pitch, maybe sometimes not through his performance, but the respect of his teammates and also what he's done off the pitch. Mike and I saw that firsthand when they came to LA, and I could see why Emery at the time had chosen Xhaka to be his captain. It takes a very unique personality. And I think in the modern game, the role of the captain has evolved and changed. It might not be as important to the new generation, but I think for certain clubs and certain fans, it still is fundamental. And we've screwed that up for the last 2 years now. I would actually look at what Frank Lampard did. Thiago Silva comes in, he gives him the captaincy when Azpilicueta is not playing. I'm more than happy for a new player to come in and be captain. If Thomas Partey proves himself and he's a leader, make him captain. If that's Gabriel or Tierney, make them captain.
How could it not be Tierney next? I mean, if things progress or even just stay the same with him, I mean, as long, God forbid he gets hurt or something like that. If he's still in the side, first choice, and healthy, I mean that's the kind of captain that you want at this club. We have not had that, and it isn't even about the skill necessarily, but I mean, the kind of leadership. Xhaka is not really on the pitch
at Liverpool. It's that type of character. You don't need to be the most glitz and glamorous player on the pitch. You need to be solid in your role in a way.
Yeah, and vocal.
Yeah. It's about setting a standard of professionalism and performance levels. That's the difference. And
I think the last clear captain that we had was Koscielny. Once Cos left, you'd say what you want about him, but he definitely had that leadership.
I can give you that. You don't have to go all the way. I mean, other than that, you're going all the way back to Vieira or maybe Fabregas. But
I mean, even when Van Persie was given the captaincy, he led by example by how he played versus vocally and dictating, things on the pitch.
I can't imagine him doing anything in the dressing room.
No.
But yeah, I mean, he at least put up or shut up, and he would put up on the pitch.
Right.
Once he finally, all of his injuries subsided. So, Owen, you've got to head out. So I think it's probably about as good of a place to stop as any. Today was an interesting one. First, as I have found out in the last 10 minutes, all of my we're starting in 30 minutes and we're live. Pods had the wrong link on them. All those tweets. So, now we know why. I mean, look, we're not claiming that we're the most interesting. We're not claiming that that hundreds of people normally watch us. But we were both looking at each other like, what the hell is going on? And so I was posting a dead link. And so anyway, thanks to those of you who came anyway, either through YouTube or through notifications. We now know who our biggest supporters are and who they aren't.
A little bit like the Arsenal fan base.
Exactly. Yeah. Fickle. Did I just see somebody like sneaking down on hands and knees behind you to not be seen on camera, or was that?
Well, probably. Is that me? Yeah, probably. It's probably Tony checking on my. Listen, I've got my apron on. Remember, I'm making chicken. I'm probably burning the chicken.
I couldn't tell if it was a dog or like an animal or a human that was
probably
bent
both.
over.
Vinny Vieira trying to get in on the show, and then Tony probably saving my chicken.
Well, I'm going to save your. I think we'll call the podcast right now. Saving Sophie's chicken.
I love it.
All right. Well, so
on the show the other day, KC wanted to say, "Let's throw the kitchen sink at them," and he ended up saying "chicken sink." So I'll lend you that one. It was hilarious. He goes, "Let's throw the chicken sink at them." We're like, "What the heck is going on here?"
Yeah, and earlier today, Steven Goff, our guest. Do you know Steven Goff?
I like Steve from the Washington Post.
Absolutely. I figured you would know who he is because you're in the MLS. And if you got to drop off, I'll see his on the chat. But I actually figured you would know who he was because we were talking about the Ozil DC United rumors. Take care, Eoin. I'm just going to play this once because couldn't stick it out to the end. But shame. So on Tuesday, when the rumors were really starting to heat back up again about DC United for Ozil, I reached out to him and he agreed, but he couldn't do it until today. And in the meantime, I'm watching the Fenerbache stuff become more and more likely. But it was still a good chat. If you missed it, if you came late, it was a good chat about kind of.
I like Steven's stuff. He's obviously covering MLS here as well. He's definitely one of the premier reporters on soccer and has been for years at an international level too. Huge supporter of the women's team,
men's and women's.
He's a top guy.
To go over, I've known about Steven living in Washington and reading the Washington Post, and I mean his name's been on my radar for 20 years. But I mean to learn that he's been here for 35 years. Started with the Washington Post when he came to uni. And has worked ever since. And it was nice to actually have a brief conversation with him.
Very cool. I'll check out the beginning of the show for sure.
And then, so we started with a legitimate journalist. We ended with a legitimate journalist. And in the middle, we had a bunch of dopes talking shit. So that's the Gooners podcast in a nutshell for you. So thanks for joining us.
I love you, Mike. Thanks always.
Thanks for coming.
All right, take